This is the Begode Mten Mini. And although it may be a shocking and somewhat upsetting thing to hear, this is not a kid's wheel, nor is it a beginner wheel. This electric unicycle is so much more. Before we get started on this full review, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to James at NextGen Mobility for providing this demo unit. Check him out at nextgenmobility.org. Let's talk about the stats and specs on this wheel. The Begode Mten Mini weighs only 27 pounds with a super fat 11 by 3 inch tire. It's equipped with a 180 watt-hour battery pack, complete with high performance and high longevity Samsung 50S cells. It comes with a teeny 1.5 amp charger, which is really all you'll need to top it off in a few short hours. What we have as a result of almost this entire thing being covered is an opportunity to ride indoors without really scratching anything up. If the top of the carry handle and the undersides of both pedals were covered in Plasti Dip, then you have total protection of the entire wheel that really you're not risking damaging your walls or your floors. You can even ride this EUC on wood floors inside your house, as long as the tire's clean, of course. Honestly, I think that's one of the biggest selling points to this wheel is that it's so ultra maneuverable that you actually can ride it indoors without any problems. Now I gotta let you guys in on a little secret. I'm not the best EUC rider out there. I'm good, but I'm not the best. And for me, the final boss of EUC riding is riding backwards. And that's where the Mten Mini really shines. Because it's so small and compact, yet it's not super duper powerful, it doesn't take off backwards like a rocket ship for you when you're trying to ride backwards. So riding backwards, this is a really big confidence builder, and I really enjoyed that about the Mten Mini. Riding backwards on the Mten Mini is just so easy to do that it's so much harder to do on larger wheels. So I really enjoy that about this particular wheel. As far as power is concerned on the Mten Mini, it has only a 500 watt motor, and it's only got a 42 volt system. So it's not designed to go super duper fast. The Mten Mini has plenty of juice to get the job done at a fairly low speed, and that's okay. Now this sounds a bit on the crazy side, but this EUC is not great for children because it is too small for a child. Let me explain. With a larger electric unicycle, you're putting your weight resting gently on the side of that wheel. So as you free mount, you are basically riding on this one leg for just a brief second as the other foot comes up on there and then eventually rests on it. Furthermore, when you come to a stop, you're able to just gently plant your feet, and it's not like it's a worrisome thing. With the Mini, it is positioned so low that by putting all of that weight on there, it's really just mashing the weight up against your ankles. You can't really do that comfortably. So what we do instead to free mount on the Mten Mini is basically hop onto the wheel. I'm not actually putting my body weight up on this wheel. I'm only putting my foot on there enough that it keeps the wheel upright. And then when it's time to go, all I'm gonna do is hop up on the wheel and put the weight evenly on both feet at the same time. When it's time to dismount, you do essentially the same thing. You take your weight off of both feet and just keep enough weight on the other foot here to keep it upright. You're just hopping off. It's just a very different way of doing things. For that reason, I think that this wheel is not the best suited for beginners. Don't get me wrong, I think that a beginner definitely could learn on this, but again, it's a different skill set that you're learning, and it's not how you normally learn how to ride an EUC. So if you're looking for an EUC for your child, I would definitely recommend getting something just a touch bigger. Maybe the M10-4, or even better, the Begode 2. Honestly, I think the M10-4 is just barely bigger, so it's really not much of a difference between the Mini and the M10-4. Don't get me wrong, anyone can learn on this, but it's gonna be a much more significant challenge, and it might turn people off to learning how to ride an electric unicycle, especially since this is more of an enthusiast niche kind of wheel compared to something that has a bit more utilitarian use to it. It's a bit nerve-wracking sometimes to try to be free mounting on the M10 Mini, and as you hop on, you're trying to do it quickly, but what if your foot misses? Then you send the M10 Mini out on a little tumble. It's not exactly the biggest confidence builder in that regard. Let's talk about the power on the Mini. Again, only 42 volts, and so therefore it's pretty easy to get this wheel to just start beeping. It's pretty easy to overpower, but it's not as easy to overpower as some other wheels on the market. Now that we've talked about who the M10 Mini is not for, let's talk about who it's best suited for. I think that we've got a really good use case as a parking lot wheel or as just a sidewalk commuter. This thing can go maybe up to 5 miles or so on a single battery charge without any major issues. And if you don't want to walk, and frankly, who does, this wheel is really ideal for just riding around on the sidewalk. No, it's not going to win you a single drag race. And it's really not that great for trying to go on trails. But for low speeds on flat ground, this thing is just a joy to ride. NextGen Mobility sells the M10 Mini for the absolute bare minimum that Begode will allow them to offer with their minimum advertised pricing. But what you get in exchange for such a low price is so much value. And I think that the M10 Mini is a really high value proposition. Let's talk about the pedals on this wheel. These are cast metal. I don't know exactly what kind of metal it is. I believe it's aluminum, probably mixed with a little bit of Chinesium in there. And anyone that tells you that these are spiked pedals is lying to you. These are really nice, and they've got nice little bumps here, but they are not quite as grippy as true spiked pedals that they put on their more expensive models. And you know what? That is perfectly fine, because having these makes it a lot more comfortable to be able to ride indoors without shoes. You can be rolling around barefoot on this wheel, and it's not going to be hurting your feet. One of the small complaints that I had when I was unboxing this wheel is the charge port. We have this nice, beautiful, thick foam that really covers up the charge port, but that also makes it a bit of a challenge to access it. Now, if you don't have fingernails, it can be quite the challenge to pull this charging port cover off. If you bite your nails, sorry, you're gonna need a tool or something. Now, as far as app connectivity is concerned, the M10 Mini doesn't really register on EUC World or DarknessBot, but on the Begode app, it does register and it works pretty well. At first, we were only able to change a few settings, but with a new firmware update, this thing is showing to be a lot more capable. I was able to go up to 7 miles per hour previously before I would hit some pretty severe tilt back, but I was riding it at 8 to 9 miles per hour. Now with this new firmware update, I'm able to hit 10 miles per hour. And I think a small child would be able to ride this at about 12 to 15 miles per hour if they already know how to ride. And so this wheel has now become quite a bit more capable than when I first received it in the mail. Now, Begode claims that the max rider weight on this wheel is 150 pounds, but I am 190 pounds and having no trouble on it. Also, the maneuverability on it is second to none. I'm able to just turn absolutely on a dime here, and you just can't do that on any other EUC out there. After riding around on the M10 Mini for a while, this just feels like anytime you hop onto any larger EUC, everything else just feels sluggish. This is just so laughably nimble that you can just do whatever you want super duper easily. Now let's talk about some of its limitations. The M10 Mini's tire diameter is pretty small, and so therefore it will definitely, no matter what, have a little bit harder of a time getting over lips, and it's not going to be able to just go over a curb the same way that, say, a Master Pro will be able to, or even something like a Begode Extreme. This is further exacerbated by the fact that it doesn't have a suspension. So if you're riding up on it and you have all that downward force on there, you only have 42 volts to push you over that lip. That's not really a whole lot, so you're just gonna have to jump it there. Another small complaint about the M10 Mini is that when I unboxed it, I found that the pads were not attached to the wheel and took a bit of time and effort to peel off that low quality adhesive. It made for a less than magical unboxing experience. After spending about 15 minutes peeling off the adhesive, I now had to figure out how to take it out of transport mode. Not that Begode includes instructions on how to do that or anything. That's a typical thing for Begode, but it would be really awesome if they did that for all of their EUCs, especially for their wheels that they market for beginners. Now, there are two different versions of this wheel. There's the 98 watt-hour version, which is yellow, and not a whole lot of people have that one for sale. That one is designed to be allowed as a carry-on on planes. That's a pretty cool idea. We also have the 180 watt-hour version, which is only sold in black. As it turns out, the FAA and almost every single airline company out there allows you to fly with an EUC up to 160 watt-hours. So this is actually just a touch above that limit with the 50S battery cells. So what I would suggest is that if Begode switched the banana version, the 98 watt-hour yellow EUC, if they swapped that battery out for 40 T cells, you can get it at 140 watt-hours, which is just below the maximum amount that you can take on a plane. Therefore, you have almost the same amount of battery capacity as the black version, which is a touch more expensive. And on top of that, you can take it on a plane. I have to admit that I don't really watch a lot of reviews from other people if I'm going to be receiving an EUC for demo, because I want to have fresh eyes on it and not be influenced by someone else's opinions on it. So with the M10 Mini, I wasn't really expecting much. After trying out the Kingsong S9, I was pretty underwhelmed by the amount of power it had. And I was expecting a very similar story to be happening with this, but that's not the case. I was really shocked at how well this was able to perform. And for a very similar price tag, the Kingsong S9 is a much worse value proposition than the M10 Mini. This thing kind of knocked my socks off with how great it was. It was just a joy to ride. I had a load of fun on this. Although it's not the best for kids and it's not the best for beginners, this EUC deserves a place in any enthusiast's stable. Partly because it is so shockingly sturdy. In my opinion, this is probably one of the sturdiest EUCs that's ever been built, and that's saying something. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because that is how you become eligible for a $150 gift card towards your next EUC purchase at Next Gen Mobility, and make sure you check out the video description for your discount codes. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.